yourself so that we can see you briefly, please, Miss?
I'm firstly trying to put on my slides first.
Okay, that's fine then. I'll tell you when I see the slides.
Yeah, they are there, Prof. Can you see them?
Yes, I see them. Thank you very much. And there you go. 20 minutes, and I'll warn you if you're close to the time.
Okay, thank you very much.
Okay.
Can I start now?
Please do.
Okay. Good afternoon, everybody. I'm Nelly Gqoli from Walter Sisulu University, and I'll be presenting the topic, Practitioner Perceptions of Play as a Pedagogy for Children's Mathematic Development. I'm going to start with the introduction and background. As I've already said that this study explored practitioner perceptions of play as a pedagogy for early mathematics development in rural childhood development centers of Oliver Reginald Tambo district in the Eastern Cape province. Play provides children with the ability to apply newly learned skills in a variety of situations by encouraging flexibility and creativity, making their learning pleasurable and keeping children internally motivated. When we talk about flexibility and creativity, that flexibility is shown as children are playing, moving from one group to another group, so they fit in within the groups. And creativity, we see creativity, for example, when they are in the mathematics play area and where there are blocks there, they are playing with blocks and they are trying to create some things like shapes. So that's when the creativity is shown there. Then preschool programs have made it a priority to provide early mathematics education. And there is a lot in the literature that has been said about mathematical abilities, which are viewed as one of the most essential factors in a child's academic success. So these abilities are being shown when they are playing, through that creativity and flexibility. However, preschool teachers, especially in rural areas, face a challenging and difficult task in implementing high preschool mathematics education. As a researcher, I visited some of the nearby ECD centers in OR Tambo Inland District, the district that is rural and poverty-stricken in Eastern Cape. So to me, it became clear that most of the ECD centers in the district, they don't offer ECD programs as expected, in which mathematics forms part of those programs. And I noticed that play was not infused in their teaching of mathematics. The practitioners there, they are using the traditional ways of teaching. So this content gap in mathematics and lack of imparting skills became prevalent. So that has aroused my interest as a researcher to investigate why, what are their perceptions, what are their views, what are their ideas in using play as pedagogy in their teaching of mathematics in young children. Now coming to the problem statement. Professional early childhood practitioners who are aware of and understand developmental theories of play are more equipped to use play as a context for instruction and assessment. That is extracted from Mofokeng 2018. And Wood 2013 also moved with the notion of Mofokeng and argues that play is almost limitless and its potential to enhance learning, but the optimization of that potential lies mostly with the practitioners and their interpretation of curricula. However, in the Eastern Cape, most practitioners that are there in rural areas are not professional teachers. They lack academic background, especially in the play, which would allow them to assess difficulties and provide appropriate support to children. So this gap has intrigued my interest as the researcher in exploring their thoughts or their opinions on incorporating play into their instructional practices, especially on mathematics. The aim of the study is to explore practitioner perceptions of play as pedagogy for mathematics learning. So in order to achieve the aim, the researcher, I wished to explore how early childhood practitioners understand play as pedagogy for mathematics learning. Also to examine how these perceptions affect instructional practices in early childhood centers. And lastly, to make suggestions on how play can be included as a pedagogy in ECD centers to teach mathematics. The research questions, there is a main research question which reads as follows: what are the perceptions of practitioners on play as pedagogy for children's mathematical development? In order to answer that main research question, there are sub-research questions. Sub-research question number 1, what are the practitioners' understandings of play as pedagogy for mathematics learning? How do early childhood practitioners' perceptions of play as pedagogy impact the instructional practices? Lastly, what are the suggestions for infusing play as pedagogy for teaching mathematics in the early childhood centers? Coming to the theoretical framework, the theoretical framework that underpins the study is that of pedagogical content knowledge, PCK, by Schulman in 1986, who described the PCK as a separate knowledge base where both content and pedagogy are combined to create professional knowledge, which is specifically for teaching. Also, in 1987, Schulman came up with another description of PCK, which says it is practitioners' interpretations and transformations of subject matter knowledge in the context of facilitating children's learning. There are some researchers who came up with the notion that PCK was first introduced by Schulman in 1986 as the type of teacher's knowledge that combines both teachers' mastery of content and pedagogical knowledge. Therefore, inclusion of knowledge of children, inclusion of knowledge of educational context, and knowledge of instructional practices in which play forms part are of great importance. So the study used the PCK because the study's focus was on play as pedagogy for mathematics learning, and yet PCK focuses specifically on pedagogy and content. So in this case, mathematical content is very important, and mathematical content cannot stand alone. It has to be applied, the how part, or the how part, that is pedagogy, the implementation part, instructional practices. So in order for practitioners to be able to be using PCK correctly, they have to apply their content in the classrooms, of which educational settings in the case of early childhood. Also, the theory gave answers to the research questions. It also elaborated on how practitioners should use content knowledge, which is mathematics knowledge, together with play pedagogical knowledge, that is implementation or their instructional practices. It also helped the practitioners on how to offer play-based activities that enhance skills for children's future learning of mathematics. In order for this play to take place, there must be activities that are there so that these activities can be able to equip the children with the skills, so that these skills they can be able to apply for their future learning of mathematics. I'm having a diagram here which shows that there is content knowledge this side, there is PCK on other side. This content knowledge cannot stand alone. At the same time, pedagogical knowledge cannot stand alone. In order for this PCK to be applicable, they need to be interceding each other. So they work hand in hand. They cannot be separated. Content knowledge and pedagogical knowledge. That's how PCK envisage. Coming to the methodology. The study used the interpretivist paradigm. So this interpretivist paradigm is used to understand the phenomenon through the meanings that are assigned by the participants. The research approach is qualitative research approach, whereby the data was collected, the data collected was the descriptive data. The design of the study used multiple case study design, whereby the researcher collected multiple views of the participants concerning the phenomenon of the study, which in case are the practitioner conceptions of mathematics, of play as pedagogy for mathematics learning. The study sites included 5 rural ECD centers, which were conveniently selected. And the participants of the study were 5 practitioners selected from each center, making 5 practitioners. And they were selected using purposeful sampling. And they were selected as information-rich participants. Data collection, the study used the semi-structured interviews, whereby open-ended questions were used to provide valuable information about the phenomena of the study. Data collection procedure. During data collection, the autonomy of the ECD centers was respected, and that autonomy involved the authority of the department, authority of the center managers of the respective ECD centers. Face-to-face interviews were used to collect data, whereby the interview guide with questions related to the phenomenon of the study was used. And during data collection, a recording tape was used also, and probes were made so that the participant can be able to provide further information. Then, after the researchers completed the interviews, a time for questions and clarifications were given to the participants, and then they were thanked after for participating in the study and for agreeing to coming to the interviews. Ethical considerations. A series of ethical protocols were in place to guarantee that the research process is ethical. Some protocols, they included participant rights, informed consent, maintaining professionalism, confidentiality, as they are stated there in the slide. Coming to data analysis. The data were analyzed using thematic analysis, in which patterns and themes were identified as outlined by Criswell 2018. 3 steps were used. The first step was organizing the data and defining the code. Secondly, developing the categories and codes. And lastly, developing themes and sub-themes. Findings. The findings of the study revealed that, coming from the practitioners' responses when they were asked about their opinions on play and play theories, the findings revealed that knowledge and understanding of play was missing in the first place. And again, knowledge of infusing play during their teaching was also lacking. Planning procedures were teacher-directed. The practitioners, they were the ones that chose the activities, their purpose and the design, and then they also implement the activities. And now the children there, they were directed by the teacher. So in the centers, traditional ways of teaching were used during that time. So there was no free play, and the activities during mathematics especially, they were directed by the teacher. And the learning environment was lacking there. And the findings indicated that practitioners were not aware, or they have little knowledge, if they have any, of designing the learning environment. And they were not aware how to create the learning environment. And during the play, outdoor play. They just let children play outside so that they can find time to do their own things. Recommendation, the study suggested that there needs to be quality education for practitioners and in-service programs that focus on the following: early mathematics content and play-based pedagogy, whereby there will be a focus on how to create indoor and outdoor play environment. Developing play-based mathematics programs that will provide practitioners with skills on how to infuse play in their teaching. Training of practitioners on play and its theories. Lastly, supporting children's learning through play, which includes indoor and outdoor play. That is the end of my presentation. Thank you for listening.
Thank you so much, ma'am. That was delightful. I really, first of all, enjoyed it because it was so clearly research. Before we continue, can I ask you to please close your slides and to unshare? There we go. Thank you so much. It's now time for us to discuss what you've been sharing with us. May I please open the discussion by saying you can take this presentation to the American Educational Research Association because it is very research intensive, the presentation, and for that you need to be congratulated. May I ask that you put your questions either on the chat or that you raise your hand. Anybody who wants to make a comment or who wants to ask Neliswe a question? Okay, I see a hand, and that is Miss
Manyatta.
Yeah, Azela van Pletsen. That's what I see here. Yes, please ask your question.
Yes,
if you want to put on your video to ask the question, you are welcome to do so.
Okay, let's see if you will be able. Yes, you can see me. Yes, good afternoon, colleagues. Look, play is supposed to be an organic part of grown as a child. And, you know, we can't expect from our practitioners to implement if they don't have theoretical knowledge. You need to have a theoretical background. You need to understand the importance of the play. And you need to understand that it's not just children playing outside by kicking ball. That play is something much bigger. And the benefits of the play and directed play, and especially using, you know, like play as a way of teaching our children it's absolutely important. And you know, it's so upsetting to see how our children are sitting at the tables. They've got 12 years of schooling to sit. Actually, whatever is happening before they 6 years old should be through the game, through play, and that's the best way for them to learn, and not just for mathematical skills, but for their physical development, for the space orientation, for the gross motor skills, for fine motor skills. So it should be like given, but unfortunately the reality is not the same. Thank you.
Thank you for that. Thank you so much for that. You can switch off your video unless Neliswe wishes to respond to you by looking at you. Neliswe, would you like to switch on your video now so that we can see you? And what would you like to say about this beautiful comment? There you go.
Oh, thank you very much. And the problem with rural areas is that this thing of early childhood development, these centers, you will notice that when you go there, some of the centers, they don't have space. They are renting in an area at some stage. That place is also used as a residential area. There's no space for creating these. Maybe some of the practitioners, they do have little knowledge of how to create the learning environment. But you'll find that this thing of early childhood development, especially ECE, birth to 4, they don't understand the main focus that we have we are having the idea of grade R. So when they are there, you find that the practitioners there, they don't even have the trainings, most of them. The only training that they have, it's only level 4 training, whereby they are being given that, and the information that they are using now, they are using that information, which is not sufficient. And you'll find that when you look at the center, they will be putting some desk, and sometimes you will see that the center is the babysitting area. There is no education that is taking place there. So that is the main problem that is taking place with the centers in the rural areas. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
And if I may to add.
Yes, please do.
Yes, and you know, the sad part about our South African reality is that majority of our children are coming from this type of the daycare centers, and that is where our focus should be. And yes. I also work with a lot of daycare centers in the rural areas, township, and it's so heartwarming to see how our ladies would love to educate our little ones, but obviously they need knowledge. We're all born with the mother instinct to take care of them, but you need to know how to teach them. Thank you.
I appreciate that comment very much, and I'm sure you do too, Neliswe. And it is human nature to imagine and to play and to move and to run. And as soon, I think personally, as soon as daycare centers and the ladies who work there, mostly women, as soon as they get the idea that they should have a pretend school and then play, which is kicking balls and so on, they are acting against their own natural instinct. Because at home, you would see that children do play when they're so young. And if there is more than one sibling, they play quite a lot and they interact and they create worlds which can prepare them. And some of that world can be about mathematics, but in an indirect way. Thank you. I now see who else? MM, where are you now? Yes, please, ma'am.
Manyata.
Yeah.
I think we are going to talk on almost the same line. Do you want a video?
Yes, please do, if you'd like to, so that we can see you. Yes, that's great. Thank you.
Okay. I find this very, very disturbing, but it's the reality. I was in another group where they were talking about play. I'm interested in it because my doctoral study is on lifestyle behavior. It's looking at physical activity, nutrition, and emotional well-being. Mm-hmm. It's not only in rural areas, unfortunately, because one study was done in Sunnyside and somewhere in an urban area. It was sort of a comparative study, whereby practitioners generally do not understand the role of play. Either as Nelson said, it's teacher directed, whether it's teacher directed or free play, they don't connect it with pedagogy. But it's sad because when we talk about rural areas, we grew up in rural areas. Mm-hmm. Play was so central that you never even saw the end of the day. We were always punished because when we were gone, we are gone. And most of the time in the groups, there will be others that are more creative. Even if we play a house, we'll end up going to one place. It means to one person who will be so creative that we're interested in the story and the things that they do. Even our play, like Gqoli, it's mathematics. Mm-hmm. I had my children who are from my grandchildren around here are here now. I mean, they go to, we'll say it's not about private schools, but I was showing them how we can play Gqoli to count, because you throw the stones in. You first throw 1, 2, 3 until you are so strong that you do everything while you are balancing. When you throw your stone up, you do that. So I think we, as academics, we are to blame. We should come with creative ways of linking what's happening at home and with what is happening in the care centers. And honestly speaking, most of them, even in here in townships, the care centers is where parents leave their children just to know that somebody is looking after them and nothing else. Just to make sure that they've eaten, there's somebody who's making sure that they are not in danger, because we are more worried about the danger in the environments that we are. And that's it. The other element is not there of trying to start to develop the child so in all areas of their lives. So I think we really need to look at it, and especially the link. For most of us who know what we did in the rural areas, we should be able to capitalize on that and link it, because if it's taken up by the parents, they're the ones that are going to suggest, okay, if you want them to understand mathematics, I think we can do this game, we can do that. So we really need to go back to basics. I think that's all I can say.
Thank you so much for that. I couldn't agree more again, because the cultural strength, which comes also with the language and the typical games and the typical signs, we underestimate the power of that. I don't want to touch on the topic of decolonization, but really in early childhood education, it is crucial to tap into what children inherit from their parents, which they inherited from their parents, and so forth. I think we underestimate it very much. Thank you for that. Do I see any other hands or requests for comments?
Yes.
Yes, please, come up.
Yes, Prof, I absolutely agree. We've got such a rich culture, which includes our stories and our songs. And I mean, our African children, the rhythm and the music is just there. And I personally strongly believe we underestimate the importance of our ECD practitioners and the first 6 years. I strongly believe, look, I started as an ECD practitioner, primary school teacher. I was lecturing at UJ. So I'm very proud to meet you. And I work at Department of Education, but really, ECD, that is where everything starts. If you can teach little ones, I personally believe you can teach high school children, you can teach students. But it's a hard work, and you need to be knowledgeable, and we need to use our rich cultures that we have, and not to go away and use what we have, and it's such a beautiful treasure that we have.
Thank you so much for coming back on that. We're close to the end of the session. Any last comments? I don't see any. Just speak up. Yes, Nora.
I have a comment. Thanks so much. In our point and inner city environment, in these small flats with high numbers of children, you know, it shows how the economic model of the more children you have in a center, the more money you have, yes, the more you stable financially. Yes. But it goes against pedagogical principles, yes, which is working with small groups of children, which is involving dialogue and interaction, dialogical interactions, and the mathematization of all experiences. It's not a specific subject, which people forget about, so that even snack time, toilet routine involves little sequencing activities. So mathematics is not number. So it's a reconceptualization of what mathematics is all about, and that even walking can become a joyful experience of counting steps or counting jumps or hopping on one foot and then the other. So it involves multi-dimensional different experiences, but in environments with very limited resources. So it means trying to see how one can complexify even the simplest experience to make it more interesting, but at the same time more joyful. Maths must be seen not as a serious subject, but something really to be enjoyed. And that's what play is all about. Thank you so much.
That's a beautiful comment, and one on which we can close the session. Children make their world mathematical if we give them the opportunity. And we would be grateful if all of you would join the new special interest groups, and I'm sure one of them will be ECE and mathematics with play. We're going to have to leave now. Thank you all for participating in the session. Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to this session. I'm Elby Hinning from the University of Johannesburg. Please, can we ask our presenter, Ms. Niftrik, to start your presentation, ma'am?
I hope you can see and hear me.
We can hear you so far, and now we can actually see you also on video, which is great. Hello.
Hello, nice to meet you. Thank you. Yes, I'm very new at this, so do I share my screen now?
Yes, please.
Okay, thank you. Okay, I hope, can you see my screen?
We see your screen, thank you so much.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so my name is Colette van Niftrik. I'm a retired primary school teacher, and I'm here to introduce you to QUISP, which is a concept that I've been working on for the past couple of decades. Is everything okay?
Everything is fine.
Okay. QUISP's intended as a new approach to teaching and learning, starting in early childhood education and then working on a continuum all the way through a school career. I just want to emphasize also that it's a very organic concept. It allows for a lot of adding, and for example, I think it would accommodate rural context and indigenous perspectives very successfully. When I speak about QUISP, my focus is on primary school because that's what I'm familiar with. So please excuse that. But I also think it's important just to get the picture of QUISP so that one can get an idea of where one is going with, along the whole continuum. But I also just want to add that fortunately for me, learned the value of early childhood education very early in my career. And like so many other people, recognize it as a make or break factor for an overwhelming number of learners. A bit further down the line, I'll get to the QUISP map template. And then, which is generally a tool for learners and teachers. But in your case, it would be your tool, providing you with a learning compass when planning your syllabus and your lessons. It's a value system for ethical awareness, and it's a well-organized place to build and store your syllabus. In the long term, and if and when QUISP ever becomes a well-established system, it could also be a storage space for people to share, I think, all across the globe, because QUISP is not culture bound, and it's not, I see it as a global tool. Anyway, so how did QUISP come about? QUISP took its first inspiration from Maslow's hierarchy of needs, basically because we easily identify and resonate with our most essential life-giving needs. Sorry, I must just gather myself. Oh, and the point with needs also is that when we call our needs into play, or when our needs are featured, that seems to, even on a subconscious, whether it's a conscious or subconscious level, it calls all our inner mind energies into play. Things like our instincts and imagination, our creativity, all the things that help us solve the problems of meeting our needs. And I just saw that as a lovely energy because it's part of learning, is learning how to fulfill your needs, is all part of the learning process. The second big inspiration came from 3- and 4-year-olds, just by observing them and how they ask so very many questions. I'm sure you're all very familiar with that. And you know, when the whys start, they seem to just never end. But that's also awoke me to the fact that there's a keen stream of connected thought in action, and a really intuitive need to learn. So QUISP, you'll see, runs a lot on those all these energies. And then the other thing that's important to QUISP is questions. I think we all know that questions are an essential element in learning, but I suddenly saw them as a powerful source of learning energy to combine with the needs energy and to turn them into a driving force for learning. So maybe you've, well, it's quite obvious on my on the screen that QUISP is an acronym for Questions for a World in Sustainable Perspective. So now I can show you what QUISP looks like. I hope I get the right way of, okay, sorry. So that is the access point to QUISP. And this is where all the activity starts. It's intended to be an app available to schools and to individuals. So it's something that could be used by an institution or for homeschooling, or anyone who can lay their hands on or has access to the internet and a tablet. I'm aware that this isn't ideal at this point, but hopefully it will encourage the people who can help to get connectivity and access to the internet more available. Now to look at the wheel, you'll notice we have me and you at the center, and our life's learning journeys are radiating out from ourselves. The topics of learning are noted, and each node along that journey is a hub of activities. Just to look at the nodes a little more carefully, each trajectory, as I said, represents a topic that will be covered each year, and each color-coded node represents a question and a hub of learning activities for that question. If a learner clicks on a hub, this pops up an array of learning activities. They could be lessons. The teacher would use the same sort of the same model to have their syllabus in. So they would have the lesson plans, whereas the learners would have the actual lessons in their hub. So, and other things they'd find there: worksheets, assignments, links for something interesting, ideas for research, some interesting videos to look at. But all of these would be age appropriate to the grade that the child is working in. And it would also be work that they can get on with on their own, either in their own time, or if they're ahead of the class, they could carry on with something on their own in the classroom. Now, how would this look on the internet? Just briefly, the learner would open the QUISP website. They would navigate their way to their own portfolio, and there they would find their own QUISP entry point. So they'd pick their topic. Let's say the child has chosen food, and once they're into the food topic, they have the QUISP map template, where the 4 circles represent questions, and they would click on question 1. Again, they would an array of activities would pop open. They might have been allocated an activity by the teacher. It might be their own choice, or they could be working at home with a parent or someone who's willing to help them. But whatever the case is, that, you know, they just click on it and then get on with whatever the hub has given them. Okay, so that's what a year's syllabus would look like. But I do want to, there are needs here that are absolutely essential and can't be left out. But on the other hand, there are some that might be, you know, they're replaceable if a user finds there's something missing, they can easily just create their own learning journey to fit in. Yeah, so I just like to point out that there is a space for I've got it as love here, which could also be care. But I feel that at some point, it's really important to teach children about their feelings, about the feelings around them, the people around them, the relationships they're in, the value of relationships, and how to cope with relationships. I do think that could bring a lot of a positive effect for society. Okay, that's 1 year syllabus. That's what a whole 12 years would look like. At the same time, I want to add here that even though this depicts 12 years, I do think that QUISP could be a helpful tool for learning throughout one's life. Okay. All right, and then I'm going to move on now. The thought process behind QUISP, in other words, sort of what brought the template into being. So with QUISP, all learning starts at the self. It treats the self as the center of the universe. And I think that helps a learner to feel very much part of everything. So we come into the world with a body, a mind, and a spirit, and with a lifelong quest for survival. Our body is full of needs. Our minds are full of spontaneous energies. I'll just pause there for you to have a look. Sorry, I should have done that just now. And then a spirit that guides us in our essences and determines who we become. And a lifelong quest for survival. All of these are brought together with questions, 4 questions that are very specific pattern, but I'll get back to that a bit later. So QUISP harnesses our needs, our spontaneous energies, our spirit, and our quest for survival into a driving force for learning. Sorry, I have that duplicated by some mistake. Then how does the QUISP template become a learning tool? The first thing I'd like you to notice here is that all learning will move from simple to complex. So from concrete to abstract, from visible to invisible, etc. So there was something else I wanted to mention here. Oh, and in the same way, the learner is learning in simple language, in the language they're used to on an everyday level, but slowly but surely the language changes so that the terminology, for example, in science, just becomes another part of their vocabulary. I don't know how you experienced learning science, but I found it quite a shock. We suddenly had to learn a whole new vocabulary, and it just threw me. So I'm just trying to protect the children who might have the same experiences I had. So, okay, that's all part of moving from simple to complex. So first thing, that when the learner clicks on the first question, which is what, in other words, what is water? They will be able to answer the question on some level, but it will be just the level that they're at. So it could be, it's what I wash with. In a later, an older child might be able to tell you the structure of water, the structure of water, let's say. So in this case, they are going from the solids that they can, the concrete, and slowly but surely moving to what they can't see and touch. And they are also moving into the building blocks of our environment, which I'll come back to as well a bit later. So the second question.
Excuse me, just a moment,
Yes.
Ms. Niftrik, you have about 3 minutes left.
Oh my hat, that's very little. Okay, I'm going to see if I can rush through this. The why question will take them from into cell maintenance, or sorry, into functionality and physiology. Then they'll go to the where question, where do I get water? They'll go to the natural environment, like the water cycle, and then eventually into things like reticulation. So they're going to the natural environment, the ecosystems, etc. And the last question is the how question. How do we take care of these things? And the how question is where they're guided to look back on the first three questions, use those facts and combine them with their spontaneous energies, their insights, what research they might have done, everything they've worked through, and answer questions around things like sustainability. Let me see. What I want you to notice here is that the learner is doing a looping action in their learning and creating a continuum, because they will end the 4 questions, and the next time the next year, for example, they'll start the 4 questions again, but on a higher level. So they are learning in a forward-moving trajectory, but at the same time they are delving deeper and more broadly into each topic and question. Let me see if I just want to quickly go to the what question, if I could, because this is an important one. The what question brings up deconstruction for reconstruction, because all matter and much of our abstract world is built from constructs and patterns of various building blocks. For example, a child will learn, this is my body, and my body is a pattern of certain things, arms, legs, etc. They'll learn later, it's also a pattern of organs, it's also a pattern of fluids, tissues and cells, which are patterns of atoms, etc. They can apply this also to society. A pattern of me's makes a family, a pattern of families makes a community, and a pattern of communities makes a nation. And so they learn in patterns all the way through into classification. Sorry, I'm now rushing into classification through worksheets, etc. And then, of course, cycles are also a very important part where they learn about connection to the whole network of life. I'm sorry that I've run out of time now, because this is all actually where CWISP is really different, because once we have deconstructed everything into these things, atoms, ions, etc., we can examine all the building blocks we have and identify patterns, explore classification, identify cycles, explore connection and interdependence. That's what it all comes down to, how interdependent we are on our environment, on each other, and how, when we know all our building blocks, we can put all of this together for innovation, creativity, and problem solving. So, and then the other very important question is the why question.
I'm sorry, ma'am. I'm so sorry, but we've strict instructions to stick to time.
I understand completely.
I wonder if in the question and discussion time, some of this will be said in the questions that folks will ask. Let me have a look.
Yeah.
Who is, thank you for that. It's, first of all, what hit me is the beautiful slides. And secondly, the experience you speak from and the different domains of human knowledge, existence, and consciousness that you touched upon. So may I have a look now at our colleagues, and if you can close your shared screen, please, Ms. Niftrik.
Okay, I'm just shared screen.
And share.
Oh, yes, I think I've got it.
Yes, there you go. And then you can stay on camera if you wish, so that if somebody asks you a question, you can explain. Are there any questions or comments? I don't see anything in the chat. And I also don't see any hands at the moment. Am I looking properly?
Are there any people out there?
If there are no questions at this point in time, Ms. Niftrik, maybe you can actually continue with your slides or just talk to us.
Okay. Well, I'd like to just I would like to cover the question. I'll just see if I can get this up again.
Yes.
Are you with me?
Yes, we see that.
So I just feel that the why question is also crucial to understanding the world, rather than just swallowing facts about it. The why question plants consequence firmly on the learning agenda and connects facts to understanding, both of which are necessary for problem solving and innovation. So, and then if I go on to the where question, if it will come up, the where question, that obviously takes us into our environment. And I don't mean just the natural environment. I do mean the built environment, that we understand what built environment does to us and why it's negative it can be a negative influence on our humanity. And then the interpersonal environment. So, and then the last question is the how question, which asks us, as I said, to turn back on all the knowledge and the insights we've gained from the first three questions, and to apply these to our spontaneous energies to them, and apply them to solving some of life's challenges. So that's basically what it comes to. That is actually the end. Yeah. So,
well, thank you.
Yeah, I think that's about it.
Thank you so much. You can close your slides, please.
Thank you, and thank you very much for listening and being there. Thank you.
There's one comment here.
Yes.
No, it's not. It's our next session that is warning me. Okay. Yeah, I would like to, though, if there's time for you, to tell me what you think teachers can do without going through the model and the app that you have designed, just simply in a care center or a preschool, just an ECD center person, what can they do to elicit from children these, what I understand from you, these natural energies and abilities to see patterns and so on?
Yeah. I think it would be a case of the teacher themselves looking at patterns and seeking patterns themselves in life around them. For example, patterns in nature, etc., and contemplating them themselves, and then stimulating children with pictures and to seek patterns. Okay. I think that the point is with patterns that they comprise all of life and we can find them everywhere. And I think we all need to just become more aware of life cycles and other patterns that connect us. Or, for example, there's a study on birds that shows how they fly in patterns, and those patterns that they fly in have actually contributed to research into cancer. Okay. And that's what I mean, that patterns, they are not just pretty pictures, they're not just visual things, they are highly interactive and have enormous effect on life. When we break down the patterns around us, basically, a lot of the dysfunction in nature is because we've broken the natural patterns down. And that's where I think we need to grow our awareness. And ECE teachers, just making themselves more aware of patterns can carry that over to their children, even through pictures and visual patterns, but just encouraging that awareness on all levels as they find them.
Thank you for that. I see that Kerry Lee Schneider made a comment that she thinks this model lends purposeful opportunities for integrated learning. And what I note here is integrated, because an integrated curriculum with good, big, patterned conceptual problems is what we all dream about. So thank you so much for this. We have 1 minute left for one last comment or question from somebody. Okay. Anya, do you want to ask a question because you're coming onto the screen?
Sorry, no, it was by accident.
Okay, fine. And then I just wanted to say lastly, thank you for that. Such a long experience that you shared with us, because I can see that it was growing with you through time. And then lastly, we don't need another warning for how we have broken the natural world of our planet and how it has devastating effects. So thank you for that. And with that, we come to the conclusion of this session. Thank you, everybody, for participating. And thank you so much for presenting Ms. van Niftrik.
Thank you very much for having me. It was lovely to be here. Thank you.
Take care, everybody.
Prof. Henning? Prof. Henning? Prof. Henning, can you hear me?
Miss Seema, she leaves and comes back in, I think.
Oh, all right. Thank you. I got worried for a moment because she said this is this. I thought this session was concluding.
No, I don't think she realizes that it runs continuously.
All right, no problem. We'll wait for her then. Thank you.
Prof. Henning, you're on mute.
Thank you, Donna, for alerting me to that. I would like to repeat then. I'm Albie Henning from the University of Johannesburg. I'm chairing this session and I want to welcome you. Would you please start, Dr. Sheikh and Dr. Moodley?
Thank you very much, Prof. Henning. I will just share my screen very quickly.
We can see you.
Thank you very much.
Proceed.
Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to our presentation. The title of our presentation today is Rethinking Pedagogical Approaches that Value Children as Democratic Citizens in Early Childhood Care and Education. I am co-presenting today with my colleague, Dr. Trevor Moodley, from the University of the Western Cape. I'll do the presentation and he will add in his comments or questions at the end of the presentation. He will respond to the comments or the questions that arises from you. Okay, so the structure of our presentation today is we changed our presentation around and we wanted to upfront what is it that we mean by democratic pedagogical approaches. Why are democratic pedagogies needed in early childhood education? We look at what some research in South Africa is telling us about democratic pedagogical approaches. We use Freire's level of consciousness. We then look at the aim of our study, the methodology, the findings, the conclusion, and the implications. So when we think about democracy, what is it that we actually mean by democratic pedagogical approaches? The word democracy is derived from the Greek word demos, which actually means the people, and kratos, which means rule. This means that a democratic society is one that is ruled by its people. So in Greece, in Athenian democracy, they actually looked at the relevance of democracy to education because of the principles that actually motivate for citizenship and power and the active role of citizens. And in our case, we are looking at how children play an active role as citizens in decision making. So one of the primary principles of democracy is a kind of participation that strives towards a common good. So as citizens make and obey laws in a political community, they are empowered to develop and realize their full human potential and capacity. So here into we are saying that how are children empowered to develop and realize their full human potential and capacity in a democratic country like South Africa? So the ideas of a democracy involve the actual active participation of all citizens, including children, with a shared vision of the common good. So for our, we look at the ideas of Dewey, Giraud, Freire, and Apple, and how their ideas and their theorizations of democracy have contributed to how democracy can be actually related to education, and more specifically, early childhood education. Dewey argues that democracy and education are linked through the communication of individuals who engage in the actual and the respectful sharing of words and ideas. As this occurs, a common bond and experiences are actually developed. So what does all this mean for early childhood care and education? We see the early childhood care and education space, the early childhood context, the actual early childhood center as a center that speaks to the foundations for developing democracy. We see it as a social institution wherein we actually allude to what Dewey said, that the early childhood space is actually a social institution wherein social reform should take place. So what are the democratic pedagogical approaches and some ideas on what a democratic pedagogical approach and what is it that we actually mean by that? So in a recent study that was carried out by myself, Dr. Martin and Dr. Trevor Moodley on listening, and this was part of a larger project that was funded by the European Union and the DHET on developing transformative pedagogies for birth to four. We found that in the study, when teachers listen responsively, children experience a sense of belonging and participation. So we look at listening as a fundamental pedagogy, and a fundamental pedagogy that is required in order for children to experience a sense of belonging and participation. However, if teachers believe that they have the final say, then teachers are not genuinely listening to children's voices, and therefore their voices are disregarded. In the study, whilst we found that teachers were listening responsively to enable children to participate and to experience the sense of belonging, one of the findings of the studies was that we also found that teachers said they had the final say, and so did not genuinely listen to children's voices. When this happens, then children's voices are disregarded. They don't experience that sense of belonging. They do not experience that sense of confidence. I can do this. I am appreciated for this. I can say how I feel. I'm not scared to express myself. And just because children are young, and in that early childhood context, we work with children who are young, and we often use age as a barrier to inviting children's voice and participation. And we need to move away from how we value children. And I'll talk a little bit about that just now. So another pedagogical approach that we speak of is the communication and meaning making. And one could say that listening forms part of communication. But when we speak about communication and meaning making, which can occur if teachers are mindful of power relations. So the famous theorist Michel Foucault reminds us that power operates on a fluid basis, and that one person is not powerful all the time. And just because the teacher is the adult in the class does not necessarily mean that she or he holds all the power. Children are also powerful, and it's our pedagogical approaches that makes them powerless. We need to focus on making them powerful so that they can experience active citizenship. Sometimes teachers dominate the power in the class by doing all the teaching and all the talking. Of course, they're there as teachers, they have to teach. But what happens is the lesson gets dominated by the teacher doing all the talking and listening to only what they think is important. When this happens, it's a form of tokenistic listening. It's not genuine listening. When we speak about knowledge construction rather than knowledge extraction, I'm here to teach the child. This is what I need to do. This is how I follow the curriculum. This is what I need to teach. This is how I will teach it. When we do that, we are focusing more. And yes, we have to follow curriculum. We have to follow policy documents that guides us as to how to carry out curriculum. But in so doing, we need to be very mindful. Are we creating knowledge with children, or are we just extracting? Are we constructing knowledge, or are we extracting knowledge? Because when we do that, we're not co-constructing with children. And Clark reminds us that it's very important to seeing the child and how knowledge of their cultures and experiences contributes to knowledge creation rather than knowledge extraction. So it's very, very important for us to know who these children are that we are working with, and to work with them rather than for them. And so therefore I place the emphasis on knowledge as co-construction rather than knowledge as extraction. So why are democratic pedagogies needed in early childhood care and education? A democratic pedagogy emanates from a child's rights perspective. South Africa was one of the signatories that signed the United Nations Convention on the Rights of the Child. So in South Africa, there are many other policies and local policies that speak to respecting the rights of the child, and especially their participatory rights. So the recent policy document on the Mr. Tech ECCE that was published in 2017 speaks about professionalizing the ECC sector, which is underpinned by respecting and encouraging democracy, fostering a culture that promotes human rights and children's rights, pursuing excellence and promoting the full potential of every child, appreciating diversity, but yet practice poses a challenge in how these rights are respected. So what are the conditions? There needs to be conditions for democratic pedagogies to actualize. Teachers must not be immersed in a culture of silence. As Paulo Freire told us, he's indicated that being immersed in a culture of silence is actually, it actually deprives teachers and children from participating in a democratic pedagogy. In so doing, teachers need to also encourage the children that they work with not to be imbibed in a culture of silence. If children are provided with an environment where they can express themselves and voice their feelings, voice their thoughts, and engage in decision making, then children can become skillful communicators, which can strengthen their citizenship. Teachers need to believe that they are change agents. Very often we hear that term, teachers are change agents. But change agents for what? Change agents, they should be change agents for social justice and children's democratic participation. Teachers need to believe, like I said, they need to believe that they are change agents for social justice and children's democratic participation. This will require thoughtful engagements, as teachers need to understand that pedagogy is not just a technique or practice. That is something that we need to seriously think about. What is pedagogy and what is its purpose? It is not just a technique or practice. It is a moral and political practice as indicated by Henry Giroux. Okay, so teaching and learning. So what is it about teaching and learning what is the condition for teaching and learning telling us about how democratic pedagogies need to actualize? We need to contest dominant discourses. As agents of change, teachers need to contest the dominant discourses that emanate from the developmental psychology perspective, placing emphasis on the developing child. Teachers need to value children in the here and now, ensuring that they move away from transmissive ways of teaching. Teaching and learning is a shared practice between children and parents. When parents form part of the teaching and learning process, children experience the sense of belonging as their parents also belong to the ECC Center. What is conditions for democratic pedagogies to actualize mean for valuing children's voices? Children's democratic participation will not just happen. Teachers need to be intentional and critically conscious. They need to ask themselves the critical questions such as, how has my teaching enabled the child to voice his opinion? How many choices did I offer children today? Or did they do only as I asked? Did I ask children about how they feel, about what was taught, or did they enjoy it or not? What is it they believe that I should change perhaps? Systems need to change. Large numbers of children, we know in South Africa, our teachers are faced with large numbers of children, and this can be a genuine challenge for teachers to listen to children. our overemphasis on attaining literacy and numeracy results, rather than building on valuing what children have to say, this is also a great contributor to quality. Valuing children's voices, children are social actors, and they should be respected for who they are now, rather than who they will become. We need to understand, we need to believe that children are knowledgeable and skillful human beings. So what is the research in South Africa telling us about democratic pedagogical approaches that support children's active citizenship? A study undertaken by myself in 2021, it was published this year, shows us how student teachers are inclined to listen for the right answer. Grade R teachers. So this study was focused basically on sending grade R students, fourth year, final year, foundation phase students to grade R schools, grade R sites, and they were asked to implement Harry Shearer's participatory model, and they were asked whether how was it that they listened to young children, and they said that in the past they were always inclined to listen for the right answer, but not delving deeper in listening for what children's perspectives are and how that might lead to quality. The study also found that grade R teachers teach in undemocratic ways. So the in-service teachers teach in undemocratic ways, not supporting children for their active citizenship and not supporting children for active participation. And they express that these are the ways that we taught, and this is the way we will always teach. So when teachers teach in this way, they are not open to children expressing their views, and children in the study, it was also found that children are not accustomed to having their voices heard. When this happens, we disable children's active citizenship.
Nasima, about 2 minutes left.
Sure. Oops, and I'm going very slowly. All right, so Freire's level of critical consciousness was the theory that we used. So critical consciousness is transformative, and Freire believed that education plays an important role in students' critical consciousness. The three stages, which are intransitive, semi-transitive, and critical consciousness. The lowest level is the transitive, where individuals accept their lives as it is and believe that changes can only happen through magic or miracles. I'm going to just quickly jump because I know that we need to go to the next slide. Okay, so the aim of our study was to explore the teacher's perceptions of the pedagogical approaches that value children as democratic citizens. The main research question was, what are teachers' perceptions of their pedagogical approaches that value children as democratic citizens? What are their understandings of children's democratic citizenship? What are their understandings of democratic pedagogies, and how do these understandings of children's democratic citizenship reflect in the pedagogical approaches they employ? The methodology was qualitative and located within the interpretivist paradigm. We did focus group interviews from both an advantaged and disadvantaged context of the Cape Flats, and we use Braun and Clark's 6-step recursive process. Just to quickly tell you about our findings, teachers were more familiar with play pedagogies and no understanding of democratic pedagogies, right? So some of the data showed us, we asked them, how do children, how do you teach young children? Which pedagogies do you use? And most of them said, well, we teach children mostly through play. The curriculum guides us through play and communication. One teacher said, this is the first time I'm hearing of democratic pedagogies. Then the one teacher said, they're very young. It's hard for them to understand. Therefore, you have to speak to the parents. Okay. So whilst teachers were familiar with play pedagogies and not familiar with democratic pedagogies, they attested, however, to the value and the importance of valuing children's decision-making and valuing their voices, but only with regards to play activities. Okay, so they said that they value their voices, things like what they play with. So when we say it's like outdoor play, especially now with COVID, we set up outside in the morning. The day before, they will decide what they're going to do. So it will be construction like Lego. Okay, so what the study found was, while some teachers were in an intransitive level of consciousness, other teachers were also in the semi-transitive level of consciousness, as they valued children's challenging home realities and framed pedagogic practices in relation to that. So, for example, we've found that one teacher said, you know, she said, can you hear me?
We can hear you, and we're wondering, because you have gone over time, do you want to continue?
I'm so sorry. Yeah, I just wanted to share. Yeah, so one teacher said in Afrikaans, you know, can you see that data?
Yes, we see it. Thank you.
Yeah, and so what we said is, from the data that was in a disadvantaged context, and where teachers said, you know, they were receptive to what the children, they framed their pedagogic practices in relation to the children. So just finally, the implications for practice, policy, and research, professionalization of how ECCE teachers need to transition from the intransitive and semi-transitive to being critically conscious teachers. The implications for policy, how policy needs to focus on the imperative need for teachers to focus on democratic pedagogies, and policies that need to influence on how children as active citizens can influence policy. And of course, more research needs to focus on how democratic pedagogies can lead to children's active citizenship. Sorry that I had to race through the end, but thank you very much.
Thank you for that. Okay, if you can close off your sharing, thank you. And now, if anybody wishes to ask a question or make a comment, I just want to mention that in schools in Finland, and I'm talking about primary grades, the children actually form what they call a Finnish parliament, and they learn the principles of democracy right there and then. And yes, we need to develop as early as possible young children who can think of themselves as part of a country, of a nation. This was a comment coming in from someone to say this was an excellent presentation. I agree. Thank you so much. Any questions? Nasima, would you please unshare yourself here, so that, and if you want to.
Yes, I'm trying to unshare, Prof. Henning. I'm just trying to remove the screen quickly.
Don't worry about that, but we'd also like to see you, if you would, when you answer some questions.
Yes.
If you don't mind. There we go. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I've read a lot of work. The Nordic countries have really embarked on valuing young children as active citizens. And we, of course, I think that I can't say we have a long way to go in actually. I think that our emphasis is placed on other areas, on just getting policy and practice on the ground, in terms, because early childhood education has taken such a low has been such a, it hasn't been an area of concern at policy level in the past, and we know that its positioning in society, has not been well respected. And as researchers in the field, I think it's our job, and I wouldn't say I don't look at it as a job, it's our passion to actually ensure that children's voices are heard. And like I said, that the other areas of, we focus so much on ensuring that curriculum is in order, practice is in order, and that teachers are trained accordingly to teach children so that they become holistic beings. This is an area that is actually being sidelined. I don't think it's being sidelined. I think that there's other areas are being prioritized, and this area just as well needs to be prioritized as well, because it's an area that leads to quality at the end of the day.
Indeed. There's another comment for you to say thank you, and the way you have theorized transformative, and I can't see the rest of the comment now. I think the way you presented, I agree with this comment, is really making us think. I mean, I grew up in the era of academics when Paulo Freire was, quoted everywhere, and then the times changed. And it's good that you do this research and that you have published, as I know, and that this idea can go forward. I still don't see questions. Please speak up if you want to ask a question if I don't see you, because the video images are now covering part of the screen, but it doesn't matter. Right. Well, if there are no more questions, there's another 3-4 minutes left. Nasima, please continue and tell us more of the work that you've been doing.
Sure, thank you. This project, I must also say, is part of the Transformative Pedagogy project, and that project focused on developing a transformative pedagogy for early childhood care and education. CPUT, I actually put a proposal through to the DHET when funding was available, and so we got a 6 million rand funding, which was the highest the institution I ever secured, and we were actually elated, and so we used the funding to create both a research project and a program development. So for the research project, we invited other national, about 6 now, together with CPUT, there were 7 national institutions that contributed, and so far we've published about 4 journal articles from the project. We also have a book chapter. We also now have conceptualized a book proposal that we've sent off to Springer, and we've got positive feedback from the internal reviewers, but of course they've had to send it out to external reviews as well. So we're waiting for the feedback from the external review. So we're hoping that comes through, and so we're starting a book on the project that we've initiated we've gone, I think, far beyond what we said our deliverables would be for the project, which we're very excited about. We're happy that we were able to deliver as per our initial proposal, and we're looking forward to the production of the book. And yes, there's a lot of work to be carried out in this in this area. I can't go to sleep at night. I'm thinking of ideas all the time, and putting in project proposals. And yes, we're also looking for PhD and more master's students that would like to pursue in studies, because this is an area that needs capacity. We need to build capacity in this area.
That's exactly it, building capacity. And if you can transform our thinking about active citizenships for young children, you will do the country such a great favor. And I don't have to read the subtext of what is going on today in South Africa. Thank you so much, Dr. Moodley and Dr. Sheikh, and all the people.
Thank you very much.
You.
I must apologize. I don't think Dr. Mudli is here today, but I'm sure he will catch up on the presentation. Apologies for that, but thank you very much for listening.
Thank you so much, everybody, for tuning into this presentation. Have a lovely day and take great care. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Thank you.
Alleen se copie. En is wel van